As the conflict between the US, Israel and Iran escalates, both Russia and Ukraine are trying to make the best of the turmoil in the Middle East. And to talk about it, we're joined by Ivana Stradner, a research fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. So, there have been no requests from the Iranian side. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated this today. Now, is the Russian message here that Tehran would simply prefer to fight against the US and Israel on its own?
Well, if history is any indication, we already know how the Kremlin perceived Iran in January, but also last year when it didn't help its allies. So, of course, Mr. Peskov has to acknowledge that Iran didn't ask for help. But here is the thing. Even if Iran asked Russia for help, Russia would not be able to assist its ally because Putin is very busy in Ukraine. But there is another thing. Putin already lost its influence in Syria. We already saw how Putin treated his ally in Venezuela, and we already saw how Putin didn't help Armenia when Armenia had a conflict with Azerbaijan. In other words, the world has to be reminded, especially Russian allies, that with friends like Putin, they do not need any enemy.
Right, rightly, you pointed to the fact that in the last few years, Russia was unable to help its allies, whether it was Syria, Venezuela, Armenia, or Iran now. How does it affect Russia's credibility in the eyes of its potential allies? Because about the current allies, I guess they are not very happy.
Again, Putin perceives international politics through a very strategic, selfish view. And nobody should be surprised. As I mentioned, I just stated undeniable facts how Putin has been treating his allies. But here is the thing. It doesn't matter in the end of a day if Putin can launch his influence operations, let's say in the global south, portraying the West as an aggressor in this case, and diverting a story from Russia. Another really interesting thing is that Putin also offered to be a mediator in this conflict. So, to me, really someone has to admire that cynicism, because it's like asking an arsonist to be the firefighter.
Well, as cynical as it may be, do you think that he may succeed in this role?
I don't believe, because again, he tried to mediate numerous conflicts in the past, and the only reason why he offered that is to portray Russia as a global power, to use that as a bargaining chip when it comes to negotiations with Ukraine. And the third thing is, of course, in that case, he would support the position of Iran. So nobody, trusts Putin to negotiate such a deal, but he had to offer that for the sake of offering, so he doesn't perceive completely throwing his ally under the bus.
Oh, about throwing your allies under a bus, Putin has also threatened Europe with terminating the remaining gas contracts among the soaring energy prices due to the war in Iran. But would he really do it? I mean, could he really abandon, especially now, his allies, Fico in Slovakia and Orban in Hungary?
Both Orban and Fico are perceived in the eyes of Putin just as assets. Don't forget that Putin was a KGB guy, which means that he perceives individuals just as assets, nothing else. So he already had a contact with Orban, and he basically congratulated Orban for his stance on Ukraine. So if it's in Russian interest to abandon Hungary and Slovakia, Putin would do it in a heartbeat. But we will see if that's going to happen, because both Orban and Fico have been used as useful idiots for Moscow, always trying to escalate in the European Union and then de-escalate and to use that as a bargaining chip. So I would not really at this moment have that gloom and doom scenario for Russian latest threats. However, when it comes to gas, Putin is trying to leverage what's happening right now in Iran, already claiming how Russian economy is going to expand. Even with that thing, I would urge Western analysts to pause for a moment and to see how this is going to end, because Russian center of gravity is indeed energy, and all of us have been hoping that Russian economy, when it comes to energy, will collapse, because that was the main pillar of Putin's financing his war. So that's precisely that Russia has been trying now to leverage, but I think it's something that we should pay attention, but not to catastrophizing in early March.
Right. So now, after a year of strained relations with its European allies, the U.S. administration seems genuinely surprised by the lack of a broader support for the Epic Fury operation in Iran. Do you think it will result in Donald Trump changing his approach towards the Europeans?
Number one thing that I would always, as I'm sitting, in Washington, D.C., as I read, European newspapers, I see almost every day warnings, how the United States is going to abandon Europe. President Trump is not going to abandon Europe. He also has a transactional approach, which is a fact, and he does expect some things in return, but also he understands very well that Russia is not American ally, and he understands very well how Russia, China, and Iran are working together. So indeed, it is in American interest to support Europe. As a matter of fact, something that I'm tracking right now and worrying is about Patriot systems, because we saw over the past few months how Russia has been launching awful attacks on Ukraine and their energy sector and critical infrastructure. So Putin is also hoping that President Trump will be very busy with Iran and not being able to help Ukraine. I do believe that it's tremendous.
But could Donald Trump accept Volodymyr Zelensky's proposal of exchanging the Ukrainian drone interceptors for Patriot missiles to protect Ukrainian cities?
I don't know if that is going to happen, if that's the deal that President Trump is willing to do, but I do believe that Ukraine has a lot to offer when it comes to drone experience. So we should definitely, consider Ukrainian experience on that front. But one thing that I also want to flag is the continuation of negotiations between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States is continuing. I also want to warn Washington, D.C. not to be naive and not to fall for Putin's latest threats when it comes to escalations and Putin's latest promises about offering any bargain. Because make no mistake, Putin wants to have this war as a protracted war, and he needs time to pause. And that's precisely why he is trying to use this particular moment to use Ukraine as a leverage, and number two, to buy more time and to continue. And the third pillar that I want to say, we have to understand how Putin's military is thinking about a new generation of warfare. We have to think about red team, how Russia would react right now. And something that I would like to more policymakers to pay attention to is the continuation of Russian hybrid war against Europe. Make no mistake, it is going to continue, and I'm very much worried that that can actually polarize NATO and Europe in the coming weeks and months. And I don't know what NATO's strategy is on that, but I do know that Putin has one particular strategy to outlast the West, and that's not the game that we should fall for.
Ivana Stradner, a research fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for more interviews and news here on TVP World.